Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this stream on YouTube or on Rumble. And surprise, surprise, Donald Trump has become the president of the United States. Yesterday, we made some bold, let's say, predictions, and I suspected and predicted that he would become a president unless there would be a massive fraud in the electoral system and rigging these elections. I'm not saying it happened in the past. YouTube policies should be aware of what I'm saying and be careful. I haven't said that it has been rigged in the past time, but this time there were so many indications that Trump is going to become president. And today we're going to have a discussion, a brainstorming together, and some debate about the implications of Donald Trump coming as a second time to the White House. And I'm very happy to have with me Dr. Thomas Malinen and Dr. Dan Kovalik. Dr. Thomas is from Finland and Dr. Dan is from the United States. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, exactly.
And guys, it goes without saying, the X accounts of both our respected guests is in the description below. The newsletter of Dr. Thomas is in the description below. And the book of Dr. Dan is also in the description below. The Case for Palestine. You could check and read their work and buy the book as well. Dr. Thomas, you predicted in your recent, let's say, newsletter on Substack that President Trump will become to power again this time. I'm really curious to understand what made you think that he would become the president. Why did you believe that Americans would be encouraged to vote for Donald Trump vis-a-vis, for example, Kamala Harris? What attracted the Americans to vote for Trump in this time?
Well, yeah, it was actually the newsletter of our company, where I'm the GNS Economics, where I am the leading author. But well, there were several actual hints of this Trump. Well, we can probably call it a landslide. It was the betting markets, certain pollsters which had a very good track record on the two previous elections, but most importantly, it was the a general disacceptance, if you may, or grunt even on the average Americans on the direction of the country. And as Vice President Harris was well, she would have been a direct continuation of the policies of President Biden. So we thought this was the main reason why Trump would win, simply because Americans are fed up to the direction of the country, and this proved out to be correct.
Dan, this is one of the reasons, of course. I have seen so many people are fed up in the US with the establishment, and they have drawn this fine line saying that there is they distinguish between Donald Trump and the establishment itself. And we know the establishment in the US is very complicated, and there are multiple layers in it. There are different circles of power in the establishment itself. For example, today I was reading that it's not surprising, but Trump basically, he ended the Bush dynasty in the past, he ended the Clinton dynasty in the past, and now he is ending the Obama dynasty. But is it fair to say that Trump is building his own dynasty now, like as part of the establishment, or still we can distinguish between him and the establishment?
Well, it's a good question. I think he's part of the establishment. He's part of a certain sector of the establishment. He's certainly got his share of support from the billionaire class, though it is true that Kamala Harris got more support from the billionaire class than he did. I think where he concerns a huge swath of the ruling class is his talk about ending the war in Ukraine, about ending all the wars, which, you know, his base is very excited about those ideas. Of course, I'm very excited about those ideas. Now, whether he'll follow through on that, we'll have to see, because he said similar things in 2016, and really he didn't follow through. He didn't make friends with Russia. He, of course, what he did with Israel, moving the embassy, for example, to Jerusalem, was very provocative. Apparently, he was interested even in a major attack on Iran. A general who worked for him claimed he convinced Trump not to do that. So we'll have to see if he follows through on these things. But I think that's where probably the military industrial complex is concerned. I do think that Kamala Harris was the candidate of the military industrial complex. I do think that was one sector that was very excited about her. And you know what they were excited about isn't that she's either pro-war or anti-war. It's that she's a complete empty vessel.
Yeah,
She seems to
yeah,
have no opinions of her own, no
yeah,
ideas of her own, and was just going to do what they told her to do. I mean, that was very
yeah.
clear. And that's where, in part, she lost, because, as Tomas said, people are not happy about the direction of the country. I think the polls show like over 70% of the American public said they're not happy with the direction of the country. But when asked many times what she would do different, she couldn't say one thing.
Mm.
Her
And
words a
that's,
lot.
yeah, she would give us,
Yeah,
she had
yeah.
5 lines. She had
Mm.
5 lines that she regurgitated for months. And that wasn't enough. And that's why she lost. And I'll just say that the press was telling us, I mean, we've been lied to, right? That Biden had, first they were saying Biden was totally fine, he was totally
Mm.
competent, until they couldn't say that anymore. And then when Kamala was chosen, they said, oh, I know we said she wasn't great, but oh, look at her, she's great. And that turned out not to be true. The more the American people saw her, the less they liked her. And then, of course, the press was telling us that she was going to win. Of course, there was that poll over the weekend saying she was going to win big in Iowa. Well, that didn't happen. None of these predictions came true. And I think the American people, by and large, knew they were being lied to. And that's what hurt her. That's what hurt her.
Thomas, I actually I agree that many people supported Trump because he was running on a peace platform. I mean, at least theoretically, right? But I remember, for example, this is not only my opinion. For example, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, in one of his famous interviews, he says that there are different presidents comes to power. Some of them have unique ideas, and they want to implement these ideas. He mentions Obama. He mentions Trump. I mean, they wanted to close Guantanamo, for example, but it's not that easy, he says. It's not easy. The bureaucracy in Washington is too big and it's too complicated. And there are people coming with black suits and black ties and telling the president how things work. I mean, is it possible for Trump to really decouple himself this time from this extreme bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., or he's going to play both sidesism and try to be diplomatic with them in terms of, especially when it comes to the wars in Ukraine and now the escalation in the Middle East?
Well, let's start with the idea of many people don't really understand Russian culture in the sense that Russian leadership comes from power. So what Dan said that Trump and Putin really did not become friends. It's partly because like Russian leaders, they do not become friends, or then the other one almost always gets killed or something like that. So what Trump did is he appeased President Putin in a way that made them appear as friends, but they were just in good terms in what comes to geopolitics. They may have some positive chemistry between them, that they respect each other and talking is easy. But what Trump really did, from looking from the Finnish perspective, he was like one of the and he will be again, but he was one of the American leaders who really formed a meaningful relationship with the Russian leader. And I would even call that a friendship, but it's just a different form. And Russians really, they really respect power, strength, and this is what Trump brought. And I think he will do it again. So in that retrospect, there is a mutual respect between Vladimir Putin and Trump, but also between Xi Jinping and Trump, I think. So there's a pathway to peace here. Iran, Israel, Syria, those are a bit different things, and I think we can go to them shortly. But if you look at the team that Trump has gathered, they're like strong critical thinkers. So it's not just him against, for example, the military-industrial complex, but there's like Gabardi. Once is great. I have become a JD Vance fan during the course of next few months, and of course Robert Kennedy Jr. So he's kind of there's a wall around him. He has gathered a defense line, and with this line, I think he can really push against the military-industrial complex to create his own policy without the risk of becoming another JFK, although they did try that 2 times already. So I think this is fundamentally a different administration of Trump from the first one. There he took they were really like rogue figures, and then people from the deep state. So I think this will be a different kind of formation, which makes it possible, enables it to him for really push through peace and get away from the military-industrial complex. At least this is my hope.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Dan, this is a good point to make. Like in his team, he has the RFK, he has Tulsi Gabbard, and probably Elon Musk coming, and Ron Paul, which also made some positive statements. Probably could be part of the Ministry of Government Efficiency or something. I think they're going to create something new in the US. It seems attractive if you're an American and you have all these characters joining Trump administration, whereas the other side are the Clintons, the Obamas, and
the Cheneys.
Cheneys, yeah. It's crazy how they thought that this could be a winning card for Kamala Harris, that all these personalities would endorse Kamala Harris to begin with. But here is the catch here. Trump, in my opinion, he will try to at least freeze the conflict in Ukraine and try to open certain level of communication back, at least that we could take one step back from the nuclear Armageddon, because there is no communication any longer between Russia and the United States, and that is very dangerous. But when it comes to Israel in the region, how can Trump be any different on this case? This is an important case for the Americans themselves, because the Trump supporters are also divided between people say America first and others say that Israel is above everything. There is a strong element in the Trump movement. They are really anti-Israeli, and some of them are really pure, let's say, hardcore Zionists.
Yes, well, Israel is the big question. And of course, the people that give us some hope for better relations with Russia, Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, for example, those are also people who are hardcore Zionists, right? I mean, I was very excited initially about Bobby Kennedy's candidacy. I even worked for him for a bit because of his anti-war stance, but then it became very clear that he was a hardcore Zionist. Maybe is more hardcore than almost any politician. And I ended up leaving his campaign and not supporting him over that. Tulsi Gabbard is similar. And of course, Trump himself, when he was president, as I mentioned, he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is a highly provocative act. Remember, he cut off funding to UNRWA for the first time, I think, ever. Of course, then that happened again under Biden. right? With Congress even passing a law saying the U.S. can't give to UNRWA till 2025, but Trump did it himself, and he seemed to be pushed quite a bit by his son-in-law, who himself is a strong Zionist, and of course we know, and I'm forgetting her name, that he had a major backer this campaign who gave him millions of dollars, who's a strong Zionist. So I worry, and what I thought about Kennedy, I also think about Trump, and that is that it's good that you talk about peace. It's good you talk about ending wars, but if you're going to double down on Israel in West Asia, that swallows up all those things, right? I mean, that makes it very hard for you to truly support peace. I do hope there's an end to the support for Ukraine. I hope that conflict ends. It needs to end. I hope we have better relations with Russia. I do hope we step back from the nuclear brink, which we are on. That is a great thing. But as long as the U.S. continues to uncritically support Israel and its genocide in Gaza and now, frankly, in Lebanon, you know, I'm not going to sleep that easily.
Yeah, I think.
Can I continue?
Please.
Yeah. So there should be something happening in my video feed. I don't. Well, anyway, but at least the most important that you can hear me. But what comes to Middle East, I think there's there's one angle which is often overlooked in this. Well, of course, these are just few analyses now because we just learned that Trump did win some 12 hours ago. But if you do not de-escalate the Middle East, there will be an energy crisis of epic proportions, crushing the global economy. So, and I think Trump is, first and foremost, he only thinks now of his legacy. He has been he wants to be remembered as a winner, which he is. And there is going to be a lot of economic problems coming to our way soon. And I think he wants that he will be remembered a person who changed the world for the good, for his children and all that. And from this angle, from this point of view, yes, there is a strong Zionist a clique, let's say, in the Trump administration. But I think the his overall aim will be towards peace also in the Middle East, because he doesn't want everything to blow up. And the link or the connection between Kremlin and Tehran it's very close. Russia, President Putin has made this clear many times. So actually, the conflict in Ukraine and conflict in the Middle East, they are tied, and they are interlinked, and both need to be solved kind of at the same time, not immediately, but in let's say in an overlapping manner. So in that retrospect, I'm also rather hopeful what comes to Middle East, but let's see how this plays out. But it was a very good addition from Dan on the actual the kind of the Zionists. I use this in the administration. That's a very good point.
Yeah, the problem is the definition of peace for Trump, because when he was in 2016 in power, and he pushed for the normalization of relations between the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, for example, with Israel, and tacitly this was aimed at killing the hope for the Palestinian statehood. And when he moved the embassy, for example, to Jerusalem, and then recognized the Golan Heights as an Israeli territory, some people argue in the region that those were so big provocations that led to the October 7 attacks against Israel by Hamas, because they understood that there is no president in the US who would agree for a Palestinian statehood any longer after this normalization. And Saudi Arabia was too close to jump the wagon And then the October 7 attacks happened, and Saudi Arabia put the file on the shelf and now says like, oh, we have to solve first the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But this is the thing. What is the definition of solving this issue? Because in Israel, they don't believe any longer in a two-state solution. And I think that, in my opinion, a two-state solution has become a fantasy. And there is going to be one state. It's either going to be one Israeli Zionist state, which requires them, or this means that they have to push at least 2 million Palestinians from Gaza out, because in any electoral system in Israel, then the Arabs will be ethnic Arabs and the Christians will be the majority. So they could become in higher positions in any potential Israeli government, or it is going to be a Palestinian state. And in this case, there are high fears after these huge big massacres that happened in Gaza, that there could be also revengeful attacks against the Israeli people, right? So from whichever side you look, it looks very grim, at least to me, what's going to happen next in the Middle East.
Let me, sorry, okay.
Both of you gentlemen, you can jump anytime you want.
I have a question for Kevork actually, but please continue,
Yeah, I was just going to say that, yes, I agree that it is grim. You know, I just got a message from a friend this morning from Gaza. First of all, I got a message from her yesterday saying that her husband's entire family was killed in North Gaza yesterday. Their home was destroyed, everyone in it killed, including the children. Okay, when this is happening every hour or whatever in Gaza. And then I got a message from her this morning saying there's just no food. There's no food to even be bought at high prices, right? There's nothing. No aid is coming in. No water is coming in. Israel's plan, and by the way, I think that their plan has been to do it in the next months before inauguration, is to wipe out Gaza. And not just to ethnically cleanse them. I think they want to just wipe out those people. And that is a very troubling and scary prospect. I do think that this time, these months between now and January, could be the most dangerous months we've ever seen. I think this is the time Israel is going to try to settle scores, to start a war with Iran. It makes me very nervous. And by the way, who is in charge right now of our government? I don't know. No one knows.
No.
It's a very scary time.
Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah, and it's a, well, the Gaza, it's a genocide, that's for sure.
Yes.
And it's unbelievable that the world is letting that happen. Okay, but the question actually to Kevork was, I was thinking this just yesterday before the elections, that now it seems that the message from Iran is that they will strike.
Yes.
Even though by every metric, it looks that the strike of Israel to Iran was a complete failure. So what is your, well, this actually applies to both of you. What do you think Iran is pushing for deeper escalation? Is it the Gaza thing, or why is this?
So the rhetoric from Iran in the past months was that we're going to retaliate against Israel because they hit us on our territory. For example, they killed Haniya on our territory, or they assassinated Nasrallah in Lebanon. Now the official rhetoric, and also some of the spokespersons, let's say, or unofficial spokespersons of Iran, for example, Marandi, on X, he mentioned recently that this time the attack against, or retaliation against Israel, is not only going to be as a retaliation for their previous attack, but also to stop the genocide in Gaza. And this is a different measure now, because previously they said, you attack us, we attack you. They didn't draw the line in Gaza that you stop the genocide and we stop attacking you. This time they say the attack is going to be devastating. Now, my analysis, and I probably could be wrong, I'm not sure 100% about this notion, that the previous attack of Israel against Iran was a failure. And the Russian systems, the satellite, the electronic jamming, and all sorts of air defense systems that they recently acquired, in addition to the network of air defenses that Iran already had, they have created like a real Iron Dome over the skies of Iran. And the Israeli fighter jets, they had to fly 70 kilometers away from the Iranian territories to strike inside Iran. They couldn't come anywhere closer to Iran to strike it. And the neighboring countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, all said you cannot use our skies to hit Iran because the retaliation is going to be on our territories. So if we put these factors into consideration, I see that Iran probably saw this a sign of weakness from the Israeli side to establish strategic deterrence against Iran. So from Iran's perspective, they could score more points against Israel using this element of weakness of Israel to strike inside Iran in a devastating way. Because how can they devastate Iran? They should either hit the energy sector or the nuclear program. And both, they received a big veto from the United States because, as you mentioned, the prices of the energy will increase in a big way and uncontrollable. And the attack is not going to be exclusive against Israel this time, but also against the allies of the United States. And they have sitting ducks in the region. The Americans have sitting ducks in Iraq. They have sitting ducks in Syria. So the price is going to be too high for the US. However, there is another conspiracy theory which I saw on multiple platforms, which says that the US needs such a war that could devastate the global economy in order to bring the CBDCs, the centralized digital currencies, into action, because the debt of the US is $35 trillion or something. And they will never be able to pay that, and they will not pay that, right? So they need because we were speaking about the Great Reset only before the invasion of Russia to Ukraine. This was the talk. The Great Reset. We want to introduce digital currencies. We want to do a reset to the global economy. So this could be an opportunity to reset what they wanted to do. So there is this conspiracy theory. I'm going to show you both of you. And I have read this on an American page, and she says the following. Of course, she's a critic of Trump, right? And she says the Trump psyop is so multi-layered and undeniably genius. The establishment has successfully conditioned both parties to focus on Trump for all the wrong reasons. He is not Hitler, like the Democrats think, and he is not the savior, like Republicans think. He is a very convincing, consuming, and charismatic actor who will absolutely be selected this election. And this was posted a week before the elections. So he can continue to distract supporters of both parties. Meanwhile, the technocrats and global cabal who fund them will move forward with implementing all of the policies we have been successfully distracted from. They will end the Fed, the Federal Reserve, right, and replace it with CBDC. They will control the border with biometric surveillance. They will implement voter ID that will become your digital ID. They will present the Everything app that will manage your social credit score. This won't happen overnight, but it will happen unless we stop the madness now. I mean, one of the reasons of the war could be to introduce digital currencies and an economic reset. I'm not sure what you thought of this, gentleman.
Well, first of all, let me just say a few things about the Iran question that was raised. I also heard, the view expressed that Iran's next attack is going to be about trying to end the genocide in Gaza. To that extent, I would support that. I think Israel needs to be militarily defeated. That's the only thing that's going to stop this genocide. In the same way that the only thing that was going to stop the Holocaust was the defeat of the Nazis. I see the two similar in that way. And I hope that Iran follows through, truthfully. In terms of this idea of at least parts of the U.S. ruling class wanting a global conflagration, I agree that there are clearly those who want that. Why do they want it? Yes, I mean, I think certainly to deal with the U.S. debt, which, as you say, can't be paid. And by the way, didn't have to be paid as long as the U.S. dollar remained the reserve currency of the world. But that's starting to end, right, with the rise of the BRICS and the rise of their alternative economic exchange system. I also think that it's just old time concern that the Western capitalism is failing. It's on the decline. It cannot compete with China. They know that. And I do think that there are those, it's not unanimous, but there are those in the ruling class that think a war is the only way to maintain U.S. hegemony in the world, and that's what makes this a very dangerous time. I think there are those willing to risk even nuclear conflagration to maintain U.S. hegemony, just as I believe Israel may be willing to risk nuclear conflagration in order to maintain its own dominance or to go down fighting as that dominance is lost, that it may opt for what some call the Samson option.
Yeah.
I think we have leaders in the West, and I think Israel is included in the West, that frankly are something out of the movie Doctor Strangelove. I mean, really, these are unhinged people
Yeah.
who do not have our best interest at heart, or even have the world's best interest at heart.
Yeah. For the leaders in Europe, for example, are completely deranged. I have been,
Yes.
watching them very closely for the past 2 years, and it gets crazier and crazier. And the only you have to go like further up to see any logic. And at the end, there is just one logic, which is the war between NATO and Russia here, which will go nuclear. So this is the only aim that explains what is happening in this continent, for example. So there's definitely these deranged people. The thing with the the Trump psyop is for example, we had this this very beautiful psyop of flat Earth, which came after the corona thing. And I think just if you would assume that what has happened to Trump over the past 2 years, coming to his 2 assassination attempts, which would be like staged in a Hollywood style if they would not be real, and also taking into account his reaction. So I think there is over psyoping the thing going on. And like coming from, I'm an economist by training, and if you say that you will remove the central bank to set up a central bank digital currency, there is a quite big logical gap here. But we will see what will come. I'm in the camp that considers that Trump is, of course, because he's a billionaire, they are really close to the elite in some way. And his first term was basically balancing act. But now at 72, was it 72? 70? How old he was? how old is he? Anyway,
He's nearly 80. He's nearly 80.
Yeah, 78. 78. Yeah, he cares only about his legacy. He's kind of a dying man. He sees that the end is coming, and I don't think such a persona will follow any guidelines anymore or be a part of this major conspiracy, which, at least to me, gives hope that he may be an actual candidate against the elite. And even though Robert is if he's Zionist in a sense, he is still pushing against certain elite agendas, and there is, of course, Musk. And like I said, JD Vance has made a strong impression to me in his interviews. So yeah, I'm in the camp thinking that this is a real deal. This is a actual turning point towards a better future if we take it. And I hope I'm right about this. And so I'm not like,
We all hope that you're right on
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, we pray you're right. Yes.
Yeah. But the point is that collapsing, taking like pushing Middle East into a regional conflict which would collapse the entirety of the global economy is just utterly crazy idea.
Yeah.
But the elite seems to be pushing for it because they want a complete collapse. But I don't think it's in the agenda of the Trump administration to go there. But I find it hard to understand both, especially the actions of Israel, that there would be any other reason behind it than, the regional war that would collapse the world economy. It's just it's really difficult to come up with any other plausible explanation for it.
Yeah, I mean, in Europe also there is. I mean, I suspect that there is a parallel deep state in Europe as well, represented by the Brussels bureaucrats, for example, von der Leyen's, Baerbock's, Olaf Scholz's, and sometimes it's really like. I go crazy when I read their statement or listen to what they say, and I really ask myself, do they really believe what they are saying to their people, especially when it comes to Ukraine, for example? Do you gentlemen believe that this presidency would also impact the careers of these politicians in Europe or boost the conservative groups, especially in Germany? I mean, I've seen Elon Musk engaging on X on the AfD politicians' profiles, boosting their reach. And he did similar thing with Trump. I mean, he mobilized all of his influencers and ranks on X to bring Donald Trump to power. He donated to Donald Trump as well. Do you also, gentlemen, see that some of the European forces, especially on the right-wing side, on the conservative side, could be boosted after the second Trump presidency?
Well,
go ahead, Thomas. Go ahead, Thomas.
No, definitely, because we have been under a steamroller. We critical thinkers and those who pushing or in this kind of critical political movements, and this will under Biden administration, NATO and our corrupted bureaucratic European elite was backed by Biden. Now the critical alternative parties are backed by Trump. So this will bring, I think many don't understand. If you look at the response of European elite today, all panic, sheer panic. Now they're calling for rearmament of Europe and building a European NATO, and it's just they seem to have lost it. So this tells you that the amount of panic here, and this really can ignite a kind of a revolution in Europe also. And I think our panic, our elite, our leaders here, which is the World Economic Forum, is the thing that is, it's kind of a network of setting things in motion here. Who is behind it? We don't really know, but that's the network. And all these puppets that has been put in place by this network, there is a panic. So I think there is there's actual chance for a revival of democratic freedom in Europe after this. But it's interesting to see what will come, and it will depend a lot of what the Trump administration actually does.
Speaking of the WEF, this is a flashback by Yuval Noah Harari. He's the advisor to Klaus Schwab. He says if Trump becomes president again in 2024, it will be the final death blow to the global order. He means the WEF global order.
The one thing we should, these people, these conspirators tend to use codes. So this could be a code for something that if Trump wins some backup plan will be put in motion. pure speculation, but we have to consider also these options.
Yeah.
I think that, the independence of Europe is on the horizon for a number of reasons. First of all, because they've been following the U.S. over a cliff economically, right? These sanctions against Russia have destroyed the economies of Europe by cutting off Europe from natural gas that they've been depending on, since Russia was the Soviet Union, right?
Yeah.
And the destruction of the Nord Stream, which clearly the U.S. had something to do with. These are things that have just decimated countries like Germany. So it's not sustainable that these countries can continue to be mere lackeys for the United States, which is what they are. So I think a de Gaulleist, type leadership of Europe is inevitable. And I do think that Trump's presidency could speed that up. And I think for this reason, that the current leaders in Europe, by and large, hate Donald Trump. They don't want to be associated with him. They're embarrassed by him. And it may lead them down a more independent path for that reason. I don't know if that's an irony or what, but it's an interesting result of a Trump presidency, that it could speed up the independence of Europe, which is necessary. I mean, I think for the world, we need, a return to a sane, independent, social democratic Europe that is not just a mere appendage of U.S. foreign policy.
Today, I spoke to contact a friend who is from the Alternative for Germany party, a right-wing conservative party, and I know from the previous from the past Trump administration, he was a big fan of Trump. So I called him and I said, "Congratulations, your friend has become president again," and he's a politician in the AfD. And he said, "Yeah, that's good, but," he said, "we learned our lesson. And he is the president of the United States, so he serves the interests of the United States. And we are hopeful that we would have cooperation with the US again. However, Germany has to understand that its interest is not always embedded with the interests of the US, and we have to find this fine line to separate our foreign policy and trade policies from the US, because at the current moment, there is no longer European or German foreign policy beside the American one."
Yeah, I think Germany should finally rise up from the shadow of the Second World War and Nazis. I think it's the time of penitence, or the period of penitence. It has been done. So Europe is lacking a leader. That's a problem. Like, Nordics can handle themselves if we are left alone, basically, but Europe cannot. There needs to be a leader, and currently it's surely missing. So I just really hope that Dan is right, and we can establish an independent Europe. But the problem kind of is that there was a Eurasian alliance, or even a union forming between Europe, Russia, and China. And the one of the conspiracy theories is that the U.S. wanted it cut, the deep state wanted it cut, and they did it. But I think, like, the ties between Europeans and Russians. Well, actually, Russians are Europeans, but the Russians have it's rather normal. For example, in Finland, they are embedded in their societies, and we have gone there. So it's. After peace, I think many things will form. The ties will form rather quickly if we are given the chance. But what we really need is cleansing of the European political leadership. These people, starting from von der Leyen, they need to go. Macron, they all need to go. Then we have a chance. And before that happens, Europe cannot really change. But we need these, like, WEF inserted puppets, we need them to go. Then we have a fighting chance of like independent new Europe.
I agree. You know, I am Slovak by nationality. We
Mm.
need more presidents like that of Slovakia, by the way, who's a good one. I'll just say, because I know we're getting near the end, that I think for all the reasons we've been saying, look, I think a new world is in birth. I think a better world is in birth. But it is that Antonio Gramsci line, you know, the old world has yet to die, the new world has yet to be born. It is the time of monsters. And let's pray we get through this time of monsters alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, fully
I
agree.
totally
Fully
agree.
agree.
I totally agree. Gentlemen, what a beautiful way to end this with a little bit of hope. And I recently started to pray again, seriously. And I haven't been for 10 years really praying. And I truly believe that with the existence of this evil, if evil exists, then God exists. If evil exists, then good exists. So let's hope that we pass through these difficult times with the less pain and suffering possible, because when the Soviet Union collapsed, it was more or less peaceful, but this time it seems it's going to be a little bit more bloody with the demise of the US empire. So let's hope the psychopaths in those planners would be deterred and stop this madness as soon as possible. And for the audience, I would like to thank all of them for watching and following and listening to this brilliant conversation with Dan and Thomas. Guys, the X accounts of both of my respected guests are in the description below, their newsletters, their books. You can follow their work in the description below. That would be amazing. Dan and Thomas, thank you so much again, really, from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it. I would like to do in the future a follow-up when new updates come from the United States and Europe. We could also do such a podcast and conversation together.
I love it.
Yeah,
Thank
sounds
you.
good. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Special thanks to you, those who are watching on YouTube and Rumble. And I will come to you tomorrow on Thursday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you and upon your families. Salam.